Hi everyone and welcome back to GM Details. In this video we're going to talk about metal particle contamination, in other words fallout. Now I don't mean what you do with your partner at the weekend because you've cleaned your car for too long. I'm talking about these little orange particles that look like a little bit of rust spot, but they are in fact a little tiny microscopic piece of metal which could in time do some really serious damage to your clear coat. It could also shorten the life of any wax or sealant that you might put on the car, and also who wants to look at an unsightly rusty spot like that, so it's best to get them removed. So what I've sprayed on here is a product called Korrosol from a company called Bilt Hamber. You may have heard of them. This is a pH neutral formula that you spray onto the affected area you want to decontaminate. And almost immediately you'll see something happen like this dark purple dye forming around the rust spot. Now just to explain, this isn't rust you're dealing with, it's a fragment of airborne metal which has become stuck in your paint from either brake discs, pads or industry, maybe even rail dust if you live next to a railway. The product is not actually dissolving the fragment, but it's reacting with the iron oxide rust around the fragment which is holding it onto the paint. The idea being the longer it's allowed to work, then the better chance it will have of removing more contaminants. Sometimes it can take 2 or 3 attempts to remove all the contamination, depending on how bad the paintwork is or how good the product is. So now in real time we're only about a minute and a half into it, and we can see there's more contamination or more dye shown on the panel than we first initially thought. So not all contamination really is 100% visible, but just with looking into this in a little bit more detail, we can actually see that round about those rust spots in the centre of your screen, the chemical has had an initial reaction over the period of a minute or so, and then nothing. So we've got 2 choices what to do here. We can either rinse it off or we can agitate it. So we're going to agitate this one just to see if we can restart this reaction. Now immediately you'll see the chemical foam up. This is the surfactants being activated to try and encapsulate the fallout particle in the foam, making it easier to remove off the car and try and prevent any damage from scratching along as you're rinsing off with the water flow. The downside to agitating like this is with the surfactants foaming, it will actually reduce the effectiveness of the reaction between the chemical and the rust, the iron oxide. So if it's as stubborn as this piece, maybe hit it again with some more fallout remover, or it could possibly need the mechanical abrasion of a clay bar, but we'll try it chemically first. So after that agitation, it's bleeding again, which is great. That's the term used for the reaction showing the purple dye running from the particle. It's trying to liquidize the bond between the rust and the paint. But again, we've only had that short period of reaction, and it seems once again to be resistant to the Korrosol. Let's now try a blanket of SNOWFOAM to see if that helps it work longer. So all the SNOWFOAM seems to have done is clean up the panel of all of the dye. Let's see on rinse off, has it removed? No. Okay, so we still have the fallout particle still there. We need to hit it again. So we're going with hit number 2 of Korrosol, more localised, just a couple of squirts on it, and speed up the footage now 10 times just to show how quick this reaction is. So we have the same sort of purpleness and the bleed coming off it, that sort of acidic reaction, and then it stops. A little bit of agitating it and it's still stubborn. I think it is actually reducing, but it's still stubborn that it won't come off on its own. So I do think that we're now going to have to turn to a clay media to remove this. What I'm using here is a synthetic clay sponge from Angel Wax. It's called Angel Wax Glide. Now I've used a little bit of SNOWFOAM and just gently rubbing on the panel. You can just feel it just biting in there to that little bit of contamination.
And at this point here you actually start to wonder if it's actually tar, because a fallout remover won't touch tar at all, but we have seen it bleeding, so we know that it's metal contamination. And at long last, I believe that's it. No, we still have a tiny little particle just inside there. Now the beauty of this little clay block, an actual clay bar itself, if you just got a little piece and squeezed it in, use a little bit of lubrication and channel it into there, would have probably worked a little bit better. But the straight edges of this clay block as it is actually fitting in there quite nicely. Now the beauty of these pads is they can be used over and over again. Just use them, keep them clean regularly in a bucket of shampoo solution with a grit guard in it, so any contaminants that are coming off the pad are going down to the bottom of your bucket and under the grit guard, so as not to come back up and be brought back onto the paint again. Now what I've used here is obviously SNOWFOAM, that's one option you've got, and I'll just continue on and clay the rest of the panel that the fallout was on there. So now you've seen up close what a fallout remover is used for. Well, it's got so many more uses, but the purpose of this video, I wanted to concentrate more on paintwork decontamination. If you're on Instagram, however, and you search fallout remover, you'll see this. So although fallout removers can have their place in decontaminating wheels, after all, they're as close as it gets to brake particles flying from the discs, but I personally wouldn't waste the product. It's not cheap, opting firstly for a good old scrub with a wheel cleaner. That not only clears the way for the chemical to get to the iron contamination, but it's kinder to your exposed metal braking components. Now this next one is from Garage Therapy, Zero Iron Oxide. Now granted, this is the version 1 of the product, they've already improved it. So if you're going to grab a bottle of this, it will be the new improved version you get. The first thing you notice when you spray Garage Therapy products is the sprayers. They're all supplied with SEMA trigger sprayers, which deliver or can deliver up to a generous 1.3 millilitres of product at a time, but that's fully adjustable from a fine mist to a stream. Now, having the trigger on the fine mist setting on the iron oxide isn't really the easiest thing to spray out, so you really have to tweak it to get the best balance. The other thing you notice is that it doesn't react just as quick. I think that's one of the improvements that they've made in the newer version 2. They've made it slightly more concentrated. Now that doesn't mean it's a thicker gel, it just means that it's a more concentrated product. It is better, and also I believe more stable in colder temperatures. I'll talk more about that a wee bit later on in the video. But first, I just want to share with you my findings on the comparisons between Bilt Hamber and the Garage Therapy fallout removers. My first comparison was to see what they'd be like left for a lot longer than you would leave them on your normal car's paintwork. So with the Bilt Hamber's trigger, there's no trouble whatsoever laying down a coat. So it takes 5 squirts to cover the entire area, whereas with the Garage Therapy with the SEMA trigger, that's certainly putting out a wider spray pattern, so 3 to 4 sprays on the panel and that's it covered. So seeing them side by side here, you can see the Bilt Hamber one is more of a liquid and the Garage Therapy is certainly more of the gel, and it's a little bit foamier. So now with both applied, I'm going to time lapse it so you can see how they behave over just over an hour. So the first thing you'll notice with the Bilt Hamber side on the right of your screen, you'll see that's more of a liquid, and of course if that's on the vertical side panels, then it's not really going to dwell too long. It's just going to spray on and then run down. It does have a good cling to it, but it's not as great as the Garage Therapy one, and that's a more stable gel like. It's certainly an interesting test, and on warmer days my money would be on Garage Therapy not drying out as quick as Bilt Hamber. Moving on another hour now, and it's getting a bit darker and we're still outside testing these, so these products have been on these panels for just over 2 hours. So give me a second, I'll get a light and we'll get a brush and we'll agitate them just to see what they're like.
Now you wouldn't obviously keep these products on any panels like that for this length of time, this is just test conditions, but look how liquid the Garage Therapy product is, and that's mainly due to the zero decon shampoo that's mixed in with the iron oxide, and that's really its party trick, because normally with a fallout remover there is a bit of residue after you rinse it off, but with the Garage Therapy one, what you would do is spray it on, let it dwell. You can actually then go and agitate it with a wash mitt, and that then activates the zero decon shampoo that's mixed in with the iron oxide, and that provides not only all this foam to help lift and draw away the iron contaminants from the paintwork, but also it helps to cleanse that paintwork, so you don't have to go around with a separate shampoo, and it's all about time saving then. And also with it being zero decon, you've then got the added advantage of a much deeper clean, and maybe even removing some like tree sap, maybe some road tar that you might have missed. Excuse my hand getting in the way holding this torch here. But the Bilt Hamber side, yes, it's a little bit drier. Certainly doesn't foam up as much, but it's still foaming, and with a little bit of agitation that just proves then that the product hasn't completely dried in and ruined your paintwork. But after a couple of hours, and it's not a hot day when this was filmed, certainly temperatures roughly around 15 degrees, and there you can see with a little bit of agitation, if you imagine that was your wash mitt, you'd have no trouble taking that off whatsoever. I don't advise leaving any of these products on for this length of time. This, as I can't stress enough, was just in test conditions, but just to let you see the difference between these two products. Let's move on. I really do like using this piece of music by Stu. It's called Fallout, and obviously very apt for this video. If you like this type of music, or you're a video creator and you want some background music for your videos, then check out Stu's YouTube channel. I'll pop a link in the description below for you. So going back to what we were doing earlier, we've sprayed iron oxide on the rear of the car, and this is the dwell time. And this has been on for roughly around 5 to 10 minutes. Now as you can see, it's still very liquid-like, very gel-like and stationary. And that is very important because the product is actually getting to work longer on any contamination it finds. You can see the bleed hasn't really dropped down that far. So with it being a sticky gel, the actual concentrated product that's within the fallout, which is the thioglycolic acid, gets to work for longer. A longer working time means the possibility that you don't have to repeat the process 2 or 3 times. So weather dependent and panel temperature dependent will depend on how long you leave it to dwell for. Roughly around 5 minutes, and anything up to 10 to 15 minutes, certainly not 2 hours like the test panels. Be extra vigilant when it comes to applying a fallout remover in direct sunlight. It will bake on really quickly, so try and avoid that as much as you possibly can. Maybe move the car around to try and avoid that situation. So with a normal fallout remover between 5 to 10 minutes, you would really consider rinsing it away with a pressure rinse here, not with the Garage Therapy. Because of the zero decontamination shampoo actually built into the iron oxide, you've got a double whammy here. So you can wet this cloth. Yes, wet the cloth. I didn't wet the cloth. What a f***ing idiot. So take your wet cloth, and that will activate the surfactants within the product that's on the car. So that has already been helping to deep cleanse and can decontaminate the car, and you can use it on even your exhaust tips, like I'll show you. And you can now see the benefit of wetting the cloth. The surfactants and the foam all comes up, and that's zero decontamination. So all those chemicals all help to clean up the lower parts. And certainly with these chromed exhaust tips, it's an excellent product to get them looking brand new again.
And of course you won't forget that all important good pressure rinse down just to get rid of any of the foam, the shampoo, contaminants, anything that's been left on, leaving behind nothing but your perfectly decontaminated paintwork. So have I used iron oxide on my wheels? Of course I have. It's still an integral part of deep cleaning wheels every now and again, just to make sure that the build-up of the brake dust and any other contamination doesn't get a chance to build up and cause any problems later on down the line. So as I said earlier, it's not ideal to be decontaminating wheels on the car. It's sometimes not practical to remove them every time you want to do it, and there are dedicated bleeding wheel cleaning products out there which are specifically designed to tackle brake dust contamination rather than iron fallout. They're sometimes made up of a different salt-based acid for that, and that would only be used on wheels. But always need a thorough rinse away. The way a fallout remover attacks brake discs just makes me really uneasy about using a dedicated straight fallout remover on them, because although you can rinse it away, but with brake discs being vented, then any of that gets down in the other side of it where possibly your rinse water isn't going to get. It's going to possibly have a detrimental effect to the condition of that brake disc over time. So if it's really not possible to remove your wheels to use a fallout remover on them, then you might find it better to angle the spray rather than directly into the wheel face. That way you could minimise the potential reaction with delicate components, especially on older cars. You'll notice a distinct difference between these two wheels here. Mine has been cleaned first. That way I can actually see where the contamination actually exists versus the product reacting with the dirt on your left. Yes, it's more dramatic to see, but is it really removing the contamination you're trying to remove, or is it simply cleaning to the same extent as a wheel cleaner? It's food for thought. Now these aren't the worst condition wheels you'll see, but that's the whole point entirely. Regular cleaning and occasional decontamination and protection will keep your wheels looking at their very best. One of the things I did when I bought the car was protect them with ceramic coating, so I chose the KKD R-Evolve or Revolve, whatever the name is, based on popular opinion from Facebook groups. There was either that or Carbon Collective Platinum Wheels, which wasn't in stock at the time, so I then went for the KKD one, and so far so good. It's been an excellent wheel coating. Of course you can, but I think the question should be, should you dilute it? So we're going to give it a try here, 50-50, so that's 50%, I'm only using 200ml, so just sacrificing that. 200ml of the Garage Therapy Iron Oxide and 200ml of water. So using in a sprayer like this, it's quite evident that really what actually comes out of it is mostly the zero decon foaming up. So we'll let it dwell for a few minutes and we'll just see if there's any reaction on this wheel. Well, you can definitely see there's a colour change in the foam at the bottom of the screen, and the disc has reacted to the fallout remover, diluted 50-50. A little bit too much foam, but I think that has been addressed in the version 2, that it foams less and is more concentrated. So possibly V2 might actually work quite well on a 50-50 dilution. You could get one and try it for yourself and let me know in the comments below how you get on with it. So if you liked this video, please do give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more from GM Details. I'll leave you with that Instagram favourite, the Raspberry Ripple Effect. See you in the next video guys, take care.